I guess it started slowly at first. You know how these things go, right? Little things that don't really add up, but you brush them off. I always considered myself a patient guy, steady. I loved Sabrina. I thought I knew her inside and out, but looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there. They always are, aren't they? It was the little things at first. She'd come home late from work, but instead of talking about her day, she'd just shut down. And the excuses. God, the excuses. I got caught up with a client. I lost track of time. I was helping a friend with something. It wasn't even the lateness itself. It was how she would lie about it, and then pretend everything was fine. She'd smile like nothing was wrong, then turn on the TV or pick up her phone, always texting or scrolling, her attention never really on me. I started noticing the subtle changes. When we'd try to talk about our future, she'd always change the subject. She'd seem distant, almost irritated, if I asked about anything personal. I remember asking her once, "Is everything all right with us?" And she snapped at me, like I was being clingy. "I'm just busy, Damien," she said, with that sharp tone I hadn't heard in years. It stung. But I didn't want to make a fuss. So, I kept quiet. But the real change came when she started looking at her phone all the time. She'd have it face down on the table when we were eating, which was unusual for her. I don't know why, but something about it nagged at me. She didn't usually care about being secretive, but now she was, almost like she was hiding something. At first, I tried not to think much of it. I trusted Sabrina. I wanted to trust her. But the nagging feeling didn't go away. I started paying attention more. I'll admit it, I snooped. It's not something I'm proud of, but I had to know the truth. One night, after she'd gone to bed, I grabbed her phone. I was shaking a little, nervous about what I might find, but also determined. What I saw on her screen made my stomach drop. There was a message from Zane, the massage therapist she'd been seeing for the last few months. The message was casual enough, nothing too overt, but the tone was different. They were close. "Can't wait to see you later," it said. "I miss your touch." I couldn't breathe for a second. Zane was just a guy she'd talked about once in a while. One of those harmless, forgettable people. He'd come by to help her with a few back and shoulder issues. Or so I thought. That was the first moment I knew. My whole world shifted. I couldn't confront her then, not yet. I had to be smart about this. So, I did what I do best. I kept my cool. I didn't let on that I knew anything. I played it like everything was fine. I didn't make any sudden moves. If there's one thing I learned in all this, it's that sometimes silence is more powerful than shouting. And trust me, I was going to make sure Sabrina felt every bit of what she had done. But, damn, it hurt. It hurt like a knife twisting in my gut. She wasn't just distant anymore. She was with someone else. My wife. The woman I trusted. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I needed to gather my strength. And more importantly, I needed to plan. That night, after I saw the messages, I felt like I was suffocating. Zane. She was with him. My mind raced with anger, betrayal, and confusion, but I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I knew if I confronted her right then, she'd twist it, make me look crazy, and probably get off scot-free. I needed to be calm, methodical, smart about this. So, the next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. Sabrina woke up, all smiles, like she hadn't been caught. She kept checking her phone, texting Zane, and I just sat there, biting my tongue, pretending I didn't know anything. "You okay?" she asked after a while, eyeing me like I was some ticking time bomb. She probably thought I was just going to lose it on her. But I didn't. "Yeah, just tired," I said, keeping my voice steady. She probably figured if she acted normal, I'd forget about it. But I wasn't going to forget. Not for a second. For the next few weeks, I didn't bring it up. Instead, I threw myself into work. I started looking at real estate, flipping houses, getting into small investments. I was building something for myself, a future I didn't need her for. I hadn't cared about money before, but now it felt like the perfect distraction. It wasn't just about making money, it was about taking control of my life again. I even started a side business. Nothing huge, but it kept me busy and gave me a sense of purpose. Every day I grew a little more independent, a little more confident. I began to realize that I didn't need Sabrina, or her lies. I could make something out of nothing. But while I was doing all that, I kept an eye on her. I watched her behavior, listened to her excuses. She was still seeing Zane, still sneaking around. The lies piled up, but I didn't react. I stayed calm, let her dig her own hole. If she thought I was oblivious, that was her mistake. It wasn't just about revenge. At some point, it became about me rediscovering who I was. I wasn't the guy who sat around waiting for her to come back, begging for attention. I was building a future without her in it, and it felt good. I realized how much I'd let her control the narrative of our life together. But now I was writing my own story, and she had no idea what was coming. Weeks passed, and the distance between Sabrina and me grew. I could feel it in the silence that hung in the air whenever we were in the same room. She'd keep up with her late-night meetings and her little excuses, but there was no pretending anymore. I wasn't stupid. I knew what she was doing. What surprised me was how calm I felt. Back in the day, I would have been a wreck, questioning everything, trying to fix it, trying to talk about it. But now I was just detached. It wasn't anger that kept me from confronting her, though I was furious. It was the realization that I didn't need her anymore. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I'd been suffocating in this relationship. She wasn't the woman I married. She wasn't the person I thought she was. So, I made a choice. I was going to leave. But I wasn't going to announce it. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble or beg. I wasn't going to give her an out, either, some explanation to make herself look good. No, I was going to disappear. I didn't need her to understand. I didn't need closure. I needed freedom. The night I decided to go, I packed my things while she was out. It wasn't much, just a few clothes, my personal stuff, and a few small items that I needed. I didn't take everything, because I didn't want her to think it was an angry departure. I wanted it to be clean. I left a note, short and to the point. I'm done. Don't contact me. I made sure to leave before she came home. I didn't want to see her face. I didn't want to give her the chance to manipulate me into staying, or convince me that she'd change. I didn't believe it anymore. I had a plan, and I was already well on my way. I'd found a new place, a small apartment in a neighborhood that was just starting to develop. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that was all that mattered. Sabrina, on the other hand, was left standing in the dark. She didn't know what to think. She probably thought I'd be falling apart, that I'd be desperate for her to come back. Instead, she came home to an empty house and a cold, final note. And that was exactly how I wanted it. I could already feel the shift. I had started to build my life without her. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming everything she'd taken from me over the years. My confidence, my peace, my sense of self. I was no longer the guy she thought she could control. I could feel Sabrina's absence like an ache in my chest, but it wasn't the same as it would have been a few months ago. It was different now. There was a quiet sense of relief. I was on my own. Finally. No more walking around on eggshells. No more pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I could breathe again. I spent the first few days in my new place just settling in. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The apartment was small, nothing fancy, but it felt like a fresh start. The neighborhood was quiet. Just the kind of place I could get used to. I spent my time working on my side business, fixing up my new place, and putting myself back together, piece by piece. What surprised me was how quickly the money started rolling in. Real estate, side projects, it was all coming together. Sabrina never saw it coming. She probably thought I'd fall apart without her. That's how these things go, right? The husband left behind, broke and lonely. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I'd learned how to adapt, how to build something from nothing. In the weeks that followed, I kept to myself. I didn't go out of my way to see her or talk to her. I didn't want to know what she was doing or who she was with. If she thought I was checking up on her, that was her mistake. My life wasn't about her anymore. It was about me, and that felt damn good. The best part? I didn't have to deal with her lies anymore. I didn't have to wonder where she was, or who she was texting, or what she was hiding behind that fake smile. The silence was freedom. I'd let her live her life, and I was going to live mine. A few months after I left, I got the idea to adopt a child. I'd always wanted to be a father, but Sabrina had always resisted. She said we weren't ready, that it would be too much to handle. At the time, I believed her. But now, I realized how much I wanted it. I went through the process of adoption quietly, without telling anyone, not even Sabrina. I didn't need her approval to move forward with something that felt right. When I brought him home, a little boy from an orphanage, I knew I'd made the right choice. His name was Lucas. He was shy at first, but he had a heart as big as his smile. I poured everything I had into giving him a better life than I had. We had our ups and downs, of course, but we were a team, and I had never felt more alive. Meanwhile, Sabrina had no idea what was going on. I didn't call her, didn't ask for anything. She had her life, I had mine. But I could tell from the few messages and calls she made to check in that she was starting to realize I wasn't coming back. That I wasn't broken. And she didn't like it. She didn't like it one bit. But the thing is, she could never admit it. She couldn't say she missed me, or that she regretted what she did. She couldn't say she was sorry, not because she didn't want to, but because she knew it was too late. She had no idea that what she'd done would come back to bite her. She was so wrapped up in her own life, she didn't see that mine was flourishing while hers was slowly crumbling. It didn't take long before people started noticing the changes. I'd been keeping a low profile, but as my new ventures picked up steam, word got around. It wasn't that I was trying to make waves, but when you start seeing success in ways people didn't expect, they take notice. My side business was taking off, the real estate was flourishing, and soon enough, I was making enough to quit my regular job. The rumors started small. Friends I hadn't seen in a while would ask me, "Hey, how's Sabrina?" Or, "Have you heard from her lately?" I'd just smile, shrug, and keep the conversation moving. I didn't need to explain anything to anyone. I wasn't going to drag Sabrina's name through the mud or play the victim. I didn't have to. The truth was already out there, and I knew it wouldn't take long before people started putting two and two together. I had a lot of people in my corner, even more than I realized. As time passed, I started hearing whispers. It wasn't direct at first. People would comment on how much I'd changed, how much better I seemed to be doing. "Man, you look happier," one of my old friends said when we ran into each other at the store. "Everything okay with Sabrina?" I kept it vague, but I could see the judgment in their eyes when I mentioned I hadn't been living with her for months. It wasn't long before I realized that the more successful I got, the more Sabrina's life seemed to be unraveling. She wasn't just losing me, she was losing her social standing. I didn't have to do anything to make it happen. I wasn't out there telling everyone about her affair. I didn't need to. People started talking. And as my network grew, so did the whispers about her cheating, about how she'd betrayed me and everyone around her. I didn't control the narrative. Sabrina did that all on her own. I remember running into a mutual friend, Kelly, at an event. She used to be Sabrina's best friend, but I hadn't seen her in months. Kelly was a little hesitant at first. She wasn't sure if she should ask about Sabrina or not, but she finally let it slip. "Have you heard anything from her lately?" "She's been," Kelly paused, clearly not wanting to say it out loud. "She's been kind of out of it. And I'm not sure what's going on with her friends." That's when I realized Sabrina was losing more than just me. She was losing her entire support system, her friends, her reputation, the people she'd counted on. The social circle she'd carefully curated was starting to fall apart because the truth was coming out. I didn't have to lift a finger. The more successful I became, the more Sabrina's lies unraveled. The cracks in her perfect little world were getting bigger, and all I had to do was let it happen. People didn't need me to tell them what happened, they could see for themselves. It wasn't a grand, public revenge. It didn't have to be. It was subtle. It was about watching her lose everything she'd built while I quietly built something better. Her betrayal was catching up with her, and she didn't even know it yet. And that, in the end, was what hurt her the most. As time passed, I realized my life wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving. I wasn't just getting back on my feet. I was building something solid, something better. Sabrina had always held me back from taking risks, from doing things I believed in. She'd rolled her eyes at my ideas for starting something outside the corporate grind. One of those ideas was opening a wellness center, a place focused on healing. Not just physical wellness but mental and emotional growth too. She'd always dismissed the idea, saying it was too risky, too out there. But now, I didn't need her approval. I was done waiting for her to change her mind. I went ahead and made it happen. I found a prime location in an up-and-coming area, something that aligned with my real estate investments. I poured everything into the project. I didn't just want to open a place for massages and facials. I wanted a holistic center that could help people transform body and mind. I hired top-notch therapists, trainers, and nutritionists. It wasn't just about business. It was about creating something real, something that would last. And then, I did something Sabrina never saw coming. I hired Zane, the massage therapist she had been seeing behind my back. I didn't hire him out of spite, but because I knew exactly what would happen. He wasn't cut out for the level of professionalism I was aiming for. He'd been living off casual clients and shortcuts, and I knew that in my high-end wellness center, he wouldn't last. Sure enough, Zane started losing work. His clients dried up. He didn't have the skill or reputation to survive in a place that demanded excellence. I didn't need to do anything overt. His own lack of professionalism did the job for me. His career crumbled, and he faded into obscurity. Meanwhile, my wellness center became a success. Word spread, and I gained more clients with each passing week. Sabrina? She wasn't blind to it. She probably thought I'd be stuck in my tiny apartment, licking my wounds. Instead, she saw my life taking off while hers began to unravel. Her friends were dropping off, whispers were circulating, and she was losing her social footing. The cracks in her life were widening, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I didn't have to throw her affair in her face. I didn't need to rub her mistakes in. The truth was already out, and it was playing out in real time. As my business grew, hers was falling apart. The rumors about her started to spread through the same circles she'd once moved in, and I didn't have to say a word. I wasn't taking revenge in some dramatic, vengeful way. I was just living my life, building my future, and letting the pieces fall where they may. Sabrina thought she'd have it all, the perfect marriage, the perfect social circle. But she didn't count on me rebuilding my life without her, and she didn't count on her own lies coming back to haunt her. Zane's downfall was only the beginning. And Sabrina? She had no idea how much worse it was going to get for her. As my life continued to improve, I realized something was still missing. Success, independence, those things felt good, but there was a deeper desire I couldn't ignore. I wanted to be a father. Sabrina and I had talked about having kids, but she always found an excuse to delay it. We're not ready, or let's wait until the time's right. I let it slide for years, but after everything that happened, I knew I didn't need her permission anymore. So, I looked into adoption. I wasn't in a rush. I researched, filled out the paperwork, and went through the process carefully. I was committed to becoming a father, even without Sabrina. The idea didn't scare me anymore. It felt right. And when I was finally matched with Lucas, a little boy from an orphanage, it felt like fate. At first, Lucas was quiet and reserved. He had clearly been through some tough stuff, but there was something about him that spoke to me. I saw a lot of myself in him. The way he carried his pain, the way he kept his guard up. But under all that, I saw potential. I saw hope. And I knew I could give him a better life than he'd had. The first few months weren't easy. He struggled to trust, and I had to learn how to be a father in real time. But with each passing day, we grew closer. He was slowly starting to open up, and I began to realize just how much I had to give him. We built a bond, a real family, and I didn't need Sabrina or anyone else to validate it. I didn't tell anyone about Lucas at first, especially not Sabrina. I didn't want her opinion, and I didn't care if she thought I was rushing into fatherhood. This was my decision, my life. I wanted Lucas, and I wanted to give him the stability and love he deserved. Sabrina, on the other hand, was still somewhere in her world of excuses and pride. She hadn't tried to contact me much after I left, except for a few half-hearted texts asking how I was doing. I didn't respond. I had no interest in hearing her excuses. She wasn't a part of my life anymore, and I was better for it. Adopting Lucas was the final step in my transformation. It wasn't just about success, it was about creating something real, something I could be proud of. I didn't need Sabrina's approval. I had built a life for myself and for Lucas. And in that life I found peace. Sabrina's world, on the other hand, was falling apart. The affair wasn't just a stain on our marriage, it was a stain on her reputation. Word spread, and slowly but surely, her friends and social circles started to pull away. She had lost her hold on everything that mattered. Meanwhile, I was thriving, raising a son, and building a future. I never wanted it to end like this, but Sabrina had made her choices. I had everything I needed now: Lucas, a fresh start, and a life full of possibilities. And Sabrina? She was left in the wreckage of her own selfishness, watching me move on while she stayed stuck in the past. It was strange, realizing how much my life had shifted since everything fell apart. It was no longer about revenge or anger, it was just about moving forward. In fact, as time passed, I found myself looking around at the life I was building and realizing how far I had come. My wellness center was thriving, my business expanding, and for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. Sabrina, on the other hand, was spiraling. The affair with Zane wasn't a secret anymore, and it had cost her more than just our marriage. The whispers about her betrayal spread through every circle she'd once depended on for validation. The friends she thought would stay loyal began pulling away. Her social standing was slipping, and she couldn't stop it. I didn't have to do anything. She was being undone by her own lies. While Sabrina's world shrank, mine continued to grow. I had taken the risk of opening the wellness center, something Sabrina had dismissed as a bad idea years ago, and now it was flourishing. People were coming to me for the kind of care I believed in, and they trusted my vision. But I wasn't stopping there. I decided to expand into something even bigger: a high-end wellness spa. It wasn't just a business venture, it was a statement. I wanted to create a space where excellence was the only option, a place that would attract the kind of people Sabrina always wanted to impress. I poured everything into it, and it paid off. The spa quickly became the go-to spot for the wealthy and influential, and with each new success, I felt further removed from the past. But there was one more thing to do. Zane, the man who had helped ruin my marriage, was still working in the wellness field. He might have thought he was untouchable, but I had a plan. I didn't need to expose him or confront him. I just had to raise the bar so high that he wouldn't be able to keep up. I hired the best professionals, set the highest standards, and made sure my spa was everything Zane wasn't. He couldn't compete, and soon enough, he was pushed out of the industry. His career collapsed, and he became a distant memory. Sabrina, meanwhile, was watching it all happen. I didn't have to say anything to her. She knew she had lost control of her life. Her friends were gone, her reputation was shot, and she was left in the wreckage of her choices. I never gloated, though. She didn't need me to remind her. The consequences of her actions were unfolding on their own. The real victory wasn't about seeing Sabrina fail, though. It was about realizing how much I had gained, how much we had gained. Lucas was growing up in a home full of love and stability. He was thriving. My business was flourishing. And I had something Sabrina couldn't take away: peace. Looking at my life now, I understood that I didn't need her to complete me. I had built something worth having all on my own. My success wasn't about revenge. It was about finding a new path, one that was mine. And Sabrina? She had nothing left but the consequences of her choices. A few months after opening the spa, life was falling into place. My business was thriving, Lucas was excelling at school, and I was finally content. I'd come so far so quickly. I thought Sabrina was behind me, out of my life for good. But then, one evening, as I was sitting in my office, a text from her pinged on my phone. "We need to talk." I stared at the message, unsure of how to react. It had been months since I'd heard from her, and after everything, I had no idea what she could possibly want. My mind raced through possibilities: guilt, desperation, maybe even some last-ditch attempt at control. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was just curious. After a while, I decided to respond, keeping it short. What's this about? Her reply came quickly. I've made some mistakes. I've realized some things. Can we meet? I didn't know what to make of it. Sabrina had never been the type to admit fault. She was always the one in control, always the one who was right. Now, here she was, asking for a conversation. I agreed, but only on my terms. I suggested a quiet cafe near my office. She agreed. When we met, the change in Sabrina was obvious. Her usual polished exterior was gone, replaced by someone who seemed almost fragile. She sat across from me, hands clasped, eyes avoiding mine at first. I could see she had been through something. Whether it was the fallout from the affair or the collapse of the life she had built, I wasn't sure. But whatever it was, she was no longer the confident woman who had betrayed me. I don't expect you to forgive me, she started after a few moments of silence. I wanted to apologize. For everything. I looked at her, feeling little more than indifference. The Sabrina I knew was gone, and this one felt like a stranger. The past felt distant, almost irrelevant now. You don't need to apologize, I replied, my voice calm but firm. You made your choices. I made mine. I'm fine. Her gaze dropped to the table. I've changed. I've learned. Maybe it's too late, but I wanted you to know that. You didn't deserve what I did. I nodded, acknowledging her words, but I felt nothing more than a quiet emptiness. Her apology wasn't going to change anything. It wasn't going to undo the hurt or the betrayal. The past was in the past, and I had no interest in revisiting it. You don't have to fix anything, I said, standing up. It's over. I've moved on. You should too. I could tell it stung, but there was nothing more to say. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need anything from her. My life was already full, and I was no longer tethered to the wreckage of our past. As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of quiet peace. This wasn't about getting revenge or making her feel bad. It was about knowing that I had built something better, something stronger. Sabrina was just a chapter in a story that was long over. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need her to validate my life anymore. The closure I'd been searching for wasn't in what she said. It was in how far I'd come without her. Weeks after Sabrina's attempt to reconnect, I felt my life settling into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. Between the wellness center thriving, Lucas growing more confident each day, and the quiet satisfaction of a new beginning, I had little reason to dwell on the past. Then came a call from Gloria, the woman I had met at the orphanage where I adopted Lucas. She had become a comforting presence. Kind, genuine, and someone who made the world feel lighter. I've been thinking about us, she said one evening, and I think I'm ready to see where this could go. Her words caught me off guard in the best way possible. Over the months, we had grown closer, but I hadn't expected her to express what I had also been feeling. We started seeing each other more intentionally, and Gloria quickly became an integral part of my life. Her warmth brought Lucas and me a sense of peace I didn't realize we needed. As our bond deepened, Gloria and I talked about creating a future together. Lucas adored her, and the way she cared for him only solidified what I already knew. I wanted her to be part of our family. One evening, as we sat on the couch after dinner, she brought up the idea of making things official. What if we became a real family, she asked, her voice steady but hopeful. I didn't hesitate. By the end of the year, we were married in a small ceremony with Lucas beaming by our side. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it felt perfect. Gloria became not just my wife but Lucas's mother in every way that mattered. She brought a love and stability into our lives that was irreplaceable. Looking back, I realized how much had changed. Sabrina's betrayal no longer haunted me. It had faded into a distant memory. My focus was entirely on the life I was building, the happiness I'd found, and the family we had become. What started as a painful ending had turned into a story of growth and renewal. The most surprising part? I no longer thought about what Sabrina might feel or how she might see me now. That chapter was closed. The life I was living wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was simply mine. Everything had settled into a rhythm, but the life I had carefully built wasn't without its challenges. Running a business, raising Lucas with Gloria, and managing my own personal growth, it wasn't always easy. But it was mine. I'd put in the work, and I had finally found something that felt real. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, life threw something unexpected at me. One afternoon, as I was leaving the wellness center after a long day, I got a call from an old friend. Adam, someone I hadn't talked to in years, but who had been close to both Sabrina and me in the past. He was someone I had trusted, and now, for reasons I couldn't understand, he was reaching out to me. "Hey, Damien. Got a minute?" he asked when I answered. I could hear something in his voice, something that made me uneasy. "Sure, what's going on?" There was a long pause before he spoke again. "It's about Sabrina. She's not doing well. I know you don't want to hear it, but I think she needs help." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't heard anything about Sabrina in months, and I'd told myself I wasn't going to care what happened to her anymore. But hearing about her struggling, some part of me still felt a flicker of concern. "I didn't ask for this, Adam," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm not her keeper. She made her choices." I know, Adam said quickly, "but this isn't about the past. She's got herself in a situation, and it's bad. I thought you might want to know." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to know anything about Sabrina's mess anymore. But part of me, deep down, couldn't ignore it. Maybe it was the remnants of old guilt or just a habit of caring about her when I shouldn't. "I appreciate you telling me," I said, though I wasn't sure why. "But I'm done, Adam. I've moved on." But Adam's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's not that simple, Damien. She's in a place now where she might lose everything. I thought you should hear it from me. I don't know if she has anyone else to turn to." I could hear the concern in his voice, but my mind was already made up. I didn't owe Sabrina anything. She had made her own bed, and I had made mine. I had no intention of getting involved in her drama again. Still, Adam's words lingered with me as I hung up the phone. I couldn't deny that a part of me wondered what kind of situation Sabrina was in. Was it her own doing, or had she finally hit rock bottom? I would never know for sure, but it didn't matter. I had my own life to focus on now, and I wasn't about to let her drag me back into hers. As I drove home, I couldn't help but think how far I had come. I had walked away from the chaos she brought into my life and built something real. I had Gloria, Lucas, my business, and my peace of mind. That was more than enough. Sabrina's problems were hers to deal with now. I couldn't let her back in. Not now. Not ever. So I turned my attention back to the life I was building. I didn't need to know how Sabrina was doing. I had found my happiness, and that was all that mattered. I thought I had moved on. After everything Sabrina had put me through, I believed I had finally put her, and the past, behind me. But life, as it often does, had a way of pulling me back in when I least expected it. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was unexpected, formal, and immediately unsettling. The return address was familiar. Sabrina's lawyer. My stomach tightened. I hadn't thought about her in months, and the last thing I wanted was to be dragged back into her drama. But curiosity got the best of me, and I tore it open. The letter was short and to the point. Sabrina was suing me for a portion of my business. She argued that, despite our divorce, her influence on my success gave her a claim to a part of it. My first reaction was disbelief. She had the nerve to come after me again, after everything? But the longer I read, the more I felt that old anger bubbling up. I had fought so hard to get where I was, built something from the ground up, and now she wanted a piece of it? It was the same selfishness, the same manipulation that had destroyed our marriage. But now, I wasn't the man I was then. I wasn't going to let her drag me back into that toxic world. I picked up the phone and called Gloria immediately. She knew everything about Sabrina and me. She had supported me through it all. "I just got a letter," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sabrina's suing me. For the business." There was silence on the other end. "Are you serious?" Gloria finally said, her voice laced with disbelief. "She really thinks she's entitled to it?" "Apparently," I replied, clenching my jaw. "I'm not letting her take anything from me." Gloria's tone was unwavering. "We'll fight it. She's not going to get away with this." With her support, I hired a lawyer and braced for the legal battle ahead. Sabrina's lawyer pushed for mediation, but I wasn't interested in compromise. This wasn't about money, it was about principle. She had no right to claim what I had built. I was determined to prove that. The process was long and frustrating. There were moments when the pressure nearly got to me, but I kept reminding myself, this was it. The final test. I couldn't let Sabrina win. This fight was more about closure than anything else. And I wasn't about to let her drag me back into her world. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. Sabrina received nothing. It was over. What surprised me most wasn't the victory. It was how little it mattered in the grand scheme of things. Sabrina's efforts to reclaim something that was never hers had been futile. I had already won. I had moved on, built a new life, and found happiness. She was just a chapter in the past, one I was no longer invested in. As I walked out of the courthouse, I realized something. No matter what Sabrina tried, she couldn't touch what I had built. It was mine. And as long as I had Gloria and Lucas by my side, I knew I had everything I needed. Everything I wanted. It wasn't the battle I had expected to fight, but it was the last one I'd ever need to face. I thought the past was behind me. After the court battle with Sabrina, I had finally found peace in my life with Gloria and Lucas, focusing on the wellness center and the future I was building. But, like clockwork, the past found a way to creep back in. It happened one afternoon when I was at the center. I had just wrapped up a meeting with the team when I saw Adam walk into the lobby. He was a friend from way back, someone I hadn't spoken to in months, but his presence now stirred an unease in me. "Damien," he said, looking anxious. "I need to talk to you. I didn't want to deal with this. Not now." But something in his voice made me listen. I motioned for him to follow me to my office. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep it casual. Adam hesitated, then spoke in a low tone. "It's Sabrina. She's in some serious trouble." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" He shifted in his seat. "She's gotten herself involved with some dangerous people. People who don't care about her. They're bad news. Damien, I know you're done with her, but I thought you should know." I clenched my jaw, trying to stay calm. "I'm done, Adam. She's made her choices." "I get that," he said quickly. "But these people she's mixed up with, they'll use her up. I don't know how bad it's going to get, but she's in way over her head." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sabrina, always a step ahead, always playing the game. Now she was tangled in something beyond her control? My first instinct was to walk away. She had betrayed me, and I had moved on. But a part of me felt that old tug of responsibility, especially after everything that had happened. "I can't fix her, Adam," I said, standing up, feeling frustrated. "She's on her own now." Adam didn't back down. "You don't have to fix her. But if you don't step in, this could get ugly. And it could pull you back in, whether you want it to or not." His words hit home. The idea of Sabrina's mess coming into my life again, threatening everything I had built with Gloria and Lucas, made my blood run cold. "I'm not going to let her ruin my life again," I said firmly. "But I'll look into it. I'll make sure it doesn't affect me." Adam nodded, standing to leave. "I just thought you should know. She doesn't have anyone else, Damien." After Adam left, I sat back in my chair, the weight of his words hanging over me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to move on and let Sabrina deal with her own problems. But the other part of me, maybe the part that had once loved her, wasn't sure I could just walk away. I told myself I was doing this for Gloria and Lucas, to protect them from any fallout. But as I thought about it more, I realized this wasn't just about them. It was the final chance to put the past to rest for good. Sabrina was testing me once again, and this time, I wasn't sure if I could walk away without facing the consequences. So, I prepared myself. Whatever mess Sabrina had gotten herself into, I wasn't going to let it destroy everything I had worked for. Sabrina had already made her choice. She'd stepped too far into that world of dangerous people, and now, there was no way out without consequences. As I dug deeper, trying to pull her out, I could feel the walls closing in around me. Gloria could see it too. The tension was suffocating, but I couldn't stop myself. Then Adam called. "Damien, it's getting worse. She's made a deal with them. They're moving fast, and I don't know if she can get out. My heart sank. Sabrina had already sold herself to these people, and I wasn't sure if even I could save her now. But I had to try. I headed to a warehouse at the edge of town, where I knew she'd be. There, I found her standing with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, cold, and dangerous looking. She looked at me, eyes wide, like she'd already given up. "You shouldn't have come, Damien," she whispered, but it was too late. "I'm not leaving without you," I said, my voice steady, but my heart was racing. The man stepped forward, but I didn't back down. I was done with running. Done with pretending I didn't care. Sabrina might have made her bed, but I wasn't letting her lie in it alone. I got her out. Barely. The whole situation had spiraled so far that, in the end, I wasn't sure who I was saving, Sabrina, or the part of me that couldn't let go of the past. We left that warehouse, but the tension in the air lingered. Sabrina was silent the whole ride back, her face blank, like she had already given up. I couldn't look at her without feeling a mixture of anger, disappointment, and the kind of sorrow that comes when you realize someone you loved had destroyed everything they touched. We didn't speak when I dropped her off at a safe place, far away from the mess she'd created. I knew she wouldn't stick around. She was too deep into it now. But I did what I had to do, even if it was just to give her a moment of breathing room before her inevitable fall. "I won't forget this, Damien," Sabrina said, her voice hoarse. There was a faint glimmer of something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe regret, but I wasn't sure. I just nodded. "I hope you find peace, Sabrina. But I'm done with this." She didn't respond, and I walked away. As I drove off, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The weight of the past few months, the chaos, the anger, it all started to lift. I'd done everything I could. Now, she had to face the consequences of her own choices. Back home, Gloria was waiting for me. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Sabrina was gone, and I was done. I looked at my son, Lucas, as he ran toward me, laughing and full of life. He was the future I'd been fighting for all along. The past was behind me now. The broken pieces of my old life were scattered, but they didn't matter anymore. Sabrina had made her bed. I had built mine from the ground up, stronger, steadier, and free from the wreckage of what once was. And this time when I walked away, it was for good.